Hey guys, this is Tattoo Tony, and today we're going to take a look at the abandoned Southern Medical Center that was located near the former center of town in Cairo, Illinois. First and foremost, I want to thank my Patreon supporters. I have a few supporters that are making monthly donations, and this video is brought to you by their continued support. This facility originally opened as St. Mary's in 1958. In 1986, the hospital was forced to close its doors, and Cairo has been without a hospital ever since. When it closed in the 80s, it was poorly secured, and a lot of people were trespassing going into this building. EPA crews found crumbling asbestos around pipes and also in the flooring. There was also containers of unidentified chemicals and medical equipment containing mercury. I would have loved to have seen the hospital before the cleanup. It was said that medical records and medications were scattered throughout the building. Cleanup on this facility began in 2007 and also finished in 2007. It's rumored that this hospital won't be here much longer. It seems to possibly have a date with a wrecking ball very soon. So this could be, a last good look at this facility.
Watch out.
The city of Cairo was founded in 1838, and you can look up information. It's a pretty cool city, but it's also had a long and tortured history. I don't have the fact in front of me, but at one time it had a very, very high per capita percentage of prostitutes in the town. You can look it up. You can find all sorts of information about Cairo. It sits at the confluence of the Mississippi and Ohio rivers, surrounded by lush farmland in southern Illinois. The population peaked in 1920 at 15,203 people. In 2012, the population was around 2,600 residents, so it's had an 86% loss at least since its peak. Prostitution and gambling were not uncommon in the city of Cairo. By the turn of the century, it had gained a pretty solid reputation for being lawless. Cairo was a river port city and also served as a shipment point for illegal alcohol bound for dry counties in southern states. There is also a, I believe, an old joint or hideout that was connected to Al Capone in the city. You can go and find all kinds of information if you're interested in the history of Cairo. Also on this channel, there's more videos of abandoned buildings in Cairo, so if you're new to the channel or you haven't seen those, go back and check them out. Since the Civil War, Cairo has had a large population of African Americans. They first arrived as free slaves that took up residence in this basically southern town located in a northern state. I believe it was the most southern point of a free state in the United States, so it was also probably along the Underground Railroad. It would have been the most southern point you could hit where you had entered a free state. Cairo's history has been punctuated and has had many violent outbreaks of racial strife. The city entered, when the city entered economic decline, in the 60s, racial strife tore Cairo apart. The town divided into two race-based groups. From the 60s into the 70s, there were riots in which the National Guard had to intervene. Murder, shootings, and buildings being torched caused many residents to leave. Cairo's reputation has never recovered. A few years ago, there was a bad flood, and it was all over the news because they were discussing what to do, because they could break a levee that would flood a lot of productive farmland, and it would save the city of Cairo, or they could leave the levee up during this flood, and it would destroy and flood out Cairo and probably cause its destruction, but it would save the farmland. And there was actually a lot of people that felt like, screw Cairo, it would do the world a favor, leave the levee up, destroy Cairo, and save all this farmland with the crops on it. Well, they ended up start where I left off. They ended up saving Cairo, and I'm glad they did. It's a very historic town. It's part of our history. Mentioned in Mark Twain novels. I'm happy they saved it. Some people disagree. I even got some comments on these videos where, you know, I had some people that said they should have let Cairo be destroyed, and it seemed like it may have been somebody from this area. Cairo's a nice town, though. I met a lot of nice people. I said hi to people. People were friendly. So don't be scared to come here. Cairo's a cool place. There's a lot of history. There's cool old buildings. You know, patronize a local business. Cairo could really use it. You know, if you come this way to take a look at stuff, spend some money in Cairo. It's a nice day trip. It's, you know, only, you know, maybe 3 hours from St. Louis, maybe 2.5. There's some cool stuff in Kentucky around here. It's cool, you know, you go down to Cairo, Illinois, it's almost like being in the South. So, you know, if you're on your way somewhere else, take a little extra time and shoot off and come take a look at Cairo, have lunch or something, you know. I just want to put that out there because it has some interesting and old history, but I spoke to everybody that I saw out. I said hi to people. I ran into Dollar General. You know, you see the stuff about the comments and read about past racial animosity. You know, I don't know because I was just a visitor, but I said hi to everybody, and pretty much everybody was friendly and said hi to me and spoke back, and, you know, no problems. So I just want to put that out there. So this was at the top of the hospital. It looks like some sort of utility room. I don't know if you guys find that spooky too, but I'm always a little spooked when I look down elevator shafts and I'm standing at the edge of them. I've seen some videos of people entering old elevators in abandoned buildings and like jumping up and down on the floor inside them. That's crazy. I can reach in with my arm and show you what's in the elevator. I don't need to stand in old elevators. I don't know if they still keep that stuff in hospitals. I suppose some of it they do, but the labels say milk of magnesia and castor oil. Castor oil especially. Some of that stuff's kind of old school. I guess those little label makers are kind of old school too. Asbestos or no, I would have loved to see this before the cleanup. I'll give you a little more detail about some of what's happened here. On November 11th, 1909, racial violence broke out, and a African-American man, Will Froggy James, who is believed to have raped and killed a young white girl, 22-year-old Annie Pelly. He was lynched by an angry mob of white residents numbering in the thousands. He was hanged at the popular corner of 8th and Commercial. His body was filled with bullets, cut into pieces and burnt, and his head left stuck half burned on a pole in Candy Park at the intersection of Washington and Elm. The National Guard was called in to stop the violence after Yet another lynching took place later that same night. Henry Salzner, a man jailed for suspicion of killing his wife, was dragged from jail by the same angry mob and hanged at the corner of Washington and 21st. In 1910, a sheriff's deputy was killed by yet another angry mob attempting another lynching. Once again, the National Guard was called in. Cairo had sprung into a violent cycle that would later put Cairo at the top of the charts for murder rates in Illinois. Yet at the time, it continued to thrive as a city. After World War II, in 1945, the town suffered extremely high unemployment as opposed to flourishing communities all across the state. This further increased crime rates, and Cairo soon became a hotbed of organized crime. Racial segregation grew over decades, and the first drive for racial equality came when a federal lawsuit was filed in 1946 to secure equal pay for black teachers. But even the judge in the case used racial slurs, showing lack of support for any sort of equality. Then in 1950, a further decline to population brought the number of residents to 12,000. At the time, it was still home to barrel factories, breweries, grain mills, lumber mills, cottonseed oil manufacturing, pottery plants, brickyards, and tool manufacturers. But behind the scenes, new shops were setting up in town. Bootlegging and gambling were the money makers of the era. The Senate began investigating into bootlegging taking place in Cairo. Profits were estimated at $20 million as illegal alcohol was funneling into neighboring dry states. A number of mobster groups were said to be running businesses out the back doors of Cairo. In 1952, efforts began to integrate Cairo schools, but black schools would not be abolished until later in 1967. By 1960, Cairo's population was down to 9,000. Racial discrimination grew by leaps and bounds, with violent outbursts between black and white citizens. By 1962, freedom movements were breaking out all over the country, but rarely given notoriety by the media. With city facilities, public housing, local parks, and almost any public and private offices segregated, the public swimming pool had become a private club to keep out the black citizens. Civil rights activists demonstrated in front of the pool only to have a young black lady run over as a white racist drove his pickup truck through the demonstration. The pool was later closed in '63 to avoid integration. During the same period, demonstrations occurred at the local skating rink. When activists arrived, the doors were locked with a note on the door reading, "No N-words here." The KKK conducted a meeting inside. After the suspicious death of a 19-year-old black soldier arose, a death while in police custody, it seemed an all-out war between the races was about to blow, and it did. The death was deemed a suicide by authorities, but the black community disagreed. Cairo native Reverend Charles Cone led the black citizens of Cairo to rise up in protest not only over the soldier's death, but for decades of harsh segregation, a riot broke out and the National Guard was called in to restore peace yet again. If you want to find out more information about the interesting history in Cairo, Illinois, there's tons of it. This room that we were looking at, by the way, if you didn't see the tags, I believe was a medical sterilization room where they sterilized equipment, kept tools. Those are kind of cool light fixtures up in the ceiling. You can see their age and maybe the cabinets in here. That's a pretty cool sink. I wonder if that was for scrubbing the tools first before they went into the sterilizer. Again, like I said, we enjoyed our visit in Cairo. You know, we're just outsiders. We really didn't know, you know, how things are today, what's going on now. We don't really know. But like I said, everybody there was friendly to us. We said hi. Everybody said hi back. And I'd like to see the town survive, and there's some really cool, gigantic homes here I'd like to see survive. You know, so I wish the city of Cairo luck. I really do. I mean that sincerely. I hope they get some good breaks. Special thanks to all my Patreon supporters. Our information, our contact information is right there. If you'd like to make a one-time donation or are interested in Patreon, just, you know, leave it in the comments. Please remember to like and subscribe. Thank you very much.